So in this exercise, we're going to go through and we're going to connect the headers and footers. We're going to go through and check references on our boilerplate templates and see where they're included. And we're also going to go through and work with containers and components. We're primarily going to focus on containers, although we will be dragging in components as well. So you're going to add a container. We're going to add components to a container. We're going to work with container padding. We're going to add some page spacing using padding. We're going to configure the component spacing with container padding. And I know that sounds pretty confusing, but when you see it, it'll all make sense. We'll work with some additional container features, which are configuring the background color. And of course, the old standby adding a background image to a container. So what we want to do in the previous exercises, we've been working with this lacerte homepage, and we want to continue doing that. So what I would recommend is that you open this page up. It should already have been copied into your portfolio folder underneath training. So go ahead and double click and open that up. While that's opening up, we're going to come back here. What we're going to do is we're going to recreate the lacerte homepage and then work through some of these things about containers and components and how that all works. So as that page is loading up, we're just going to switch back over here and create the new one. So again, to create a new page from the top here, new page, or just click on new, and your title and your name, and then your options for choosing templates are going to come up here as well. So what we want you to do is add in lacerte underscore your last name, and do that for the title and the name. We'll be making some adjustments to those later. And then click responsive standard page template and click create. So let's double click that and open that up. Again, we'll look back over here at the lacerte page. It's kind of our reference. And that here is, this is what you're looking at when you create a new page. So it's got some directions on including the header component and the footer component. So that's one of the first things we're going to do. Then we're going to start adding some containers in here and building this out. So this first lesson will really just will be about containers and the boilerplate and connecting those include headers. So another thing we want to do, and it's just a good practice to do on every single page when you start out, second tab on the sidekick, go to page properties, open that up. And there's some basic considerations that you should always consider to be requirements. These are things that you'll always want to do the first time you go through and get a page started. So especially if you're editing in responsive. So here's the page properties. On the basic tab, we've got internal title. There's some things in here we'll come back and do some work with. Definitely want keywords and descriptions, and if you want to hide your page, robots. But really the most important thing initially we're going to do is just go ahead and turn the responsive viewport on. So that's just telling this page that it's actually allowing this page to communicate back to AEM and say, this is a responsive page. So that's on the Basics tab under the SEO and Metadata dropdown, and it's enabling the responsive viewport on. Next thing we're going to do is go to the Advanced tab. Now let's go to the Analytics tab. We're going to enable Site Catalyst. Make sure this is on version 15. There's additional information we can add in here later. If you're a global site, you're going to want to enable Optimizely, but we want to get those done. And then really what we want to do is connect these headers and the footer. So now you just saw the video about headers and footers and include components and boilerplate templates. So for these headers and footers on these templates, we access that connection via the Attributes tab. So here's our header path. So we're just going to point back to our header page. So we'll click on that. That's going to give us this navigational tree that we can go through. In production, what you would do, so for instance, this is the Pro Tax Group page, that lacerte homepage. Underneath their structure, there would no doubt be a way to access for lacerte. Come here, and they've got include components listed thusly. So we could we'd go through and attach the header and the footer that way. We're in the training environment, and since this is a replication of production, we're not sure if this will change or not. I've gone ahead and copied a version of that into the training users node so that we're sure that that's not going to change and get messed up too much. So anyway, you go to training users, ENUS, go to my folder, training, and then you'll see down here include. Open that up, and we have header and footer. Scroll that down and pick the PTG header as your header path and click OK. Now that's going to pull in that header that we've seen on the lacerte homepage into this page. Now we want to do the footer as well. So a little trick is go ahead and highlight this header path, put it down here, and then paste it in. So when you click on the taxonomy here, it's going to scroll you automatically down to that area. So in this case, I knew that the footer was sitting right next to the header, and I didn't want to have to watch me go through all this. So I can go through, and that'll put me right in the spot. I'll click footer, and then click OK. And then when I click OK, it should pull in the header and the footer, something similar to what we're seeing on the lacerte homepage. I would say just a quick word of caution is that this page may not look exactly the same. It's going to look pretty close, but it may not be exactly the same. And we're okay with that. Really, we're not trying to replicate the page. That's not the function of training. The function really is to get you comfortable with working through some of these things. Okay? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a container, and then we're going to put a component in that container. Then we're going to do some work with the container. So right here, I'm going to highlight this, right click, click New, Harmony Core. I'm going to add a container, click OK. And I can see that container was put in there. Now I'm going to click New here, and that's going to allow me to go through and pick any component that's available for that container. And I'm going to go to the responsive because I'm looking for a grid responsive component, and I'm going to put that in right there. Now when you put in the grid, it's going to prompt you to fix a problem. It's going to prompt you actually just to fill in this desktop column widths. Those can't be empty, and those need to be fixed. So we're going to go through and just take a quick look at that. Before we do, I just wanted to go over to the lacerte homepage, kind of show you why we're doing what we're doing. So right here, I can see that, I'm going to scroll that up and get it out of the way. It has a container and has a grid responsive. So that's the structure of the first part of this, top part of this page, and that's what we're trying to recreate on the other page. So I pulled in a grid responsive, and but I can see that it doesn't look anything like the other one, like the lacerte homepage, so I need to go through and set it up that way. So let's go ahead and click Edit on the grid responsive. We will go through the grid responsive in greater detail. Right now, all you're really required to do is kind of follow these directions. I'll explain some things as we go, and a lot of these things just need 1 or 2 or 3 times to go through it, then it starts to make sense. So if you look at the way the defaults on this grid is that there are 3 containers. So what that is basically saying is that there are 3 units that will be used to make up the span of the row. And that row is broken up into factors of 12. So if there were 3 here, we'd need to have 3 numbers that were either 12 itself or factors of 12. So again, to hear this explained is a little bit more difficult than then to actually do it. So we'll just go ahead and do it, and when you see it, it'll start to make a little bit more sense to you. So if I want to replicate what's in here, what I can see is that there's a row up here, that's a factor of 12, and then we have 2, or there's a container here that spans the entire width. Then we have 2 containers here that aren't quite equal, right? So if this was 12, that's not 6, and that's not 6. It's probably like 5 and 7 is what we're looking at. So let's go over here, and that's the desktop view, and add in what that looks like. So it'd be 12-5-7, and that's our desktop view. Now, because it's responsive, we have the option of going through and creating a tablet view and a mobile view as well, and we want to do that. So I already know how that one is set up, so it's 0, 12, 0. And this is the same, 0-12-0. So what it's a little hard to think through the first time you see this, but what that's going to tell me is that when it's in tablet view and mobile view, this first column is not going to be presented. So 0 basically says don't present the information in that particular container. So let's go ahead and click OK and take a look at this. Let's see what we have. So you can see we do have something that looks like the lacerte homepage. We have this 12 up here. This is not quite 6 and 6, and truly it was 5 and 7. So that's what we've got, and I feel pretty good about that. So the next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and put in that background image that I see over here. So this is the infamous blonde woman, is I think the way this is referred to. So we're going to pull in the content finder, just open that up. And I'm going to do a search on this. So what I'm searching on here, in a previous exercise, you were asked to download these images and to tag them, add properties to them so they'd be findable. So I've done that, and this is the one that, so learning is kind of my team name, and then I've got HRO for hero, and that's calling up this image, and so there's the one I'm looking for. So to put in that image, I've got to put it into the background of a container. So there we go. I've pulled up the edit function, edit component function. Then I'm going to grab this image and bring it into the drop image area. The purple bounding box told me that that's going to fit okay. And if I was to check this here, I could see, yeah, this is in my folder, so I'm pretty good with that. If this was the wrong one, I could just clear it out. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to close down this content finder too. Okay. So there we have that. It's not pretty, but it's looking pretty similar to what we have, what the lacerte homepage looks like. So we've got our grid responsive. And I think what I'd like to do is start building this out a little bit. So let's go over here and take a look at this. I can tell that this is a text component because it's got text in it. So let's go ahead and build that out. We're going to take a little bit of a shortcut. We're going to click Edit, open this up. So I'm on the lacerte homepage. I'm just going to copy this across. Now I've got that copied into memory. What I want to do first is drop in a text component here. So again, highlight, green bounding box, right click new, open this up. It's going to give me a filtered list of all the components that'll fit in there. Text harmony, click OK. And you can see by this icon right here that that is a text component. That is your other tip. So let's go ahead and edit that. So I'm going to right click, edit. I already have that text stored in memory. I'm just going to paste that in. So let's compare that. So here is our page, and here is the lacerte page. There's a couple of things I can see here. This seems to be, in fact, even as I mouse over this, I can see that this bounding box is indented. Also, this is sitting on a white background. So one of the things we're going to want to look at is how that was achieved. And if you get nothing else out of this when you're working with containers and components, you really should leverage as much as you possibly can this padding feature. It's available in the component edit dialog under the attributes tab. So let's take a look at this and we can just kind of analyze this. Here's the padding feature. These are values of pixels, and because I've designated that here, you could also do percentages if you wanted to. And we've got 20, 60, 20, 60. This is top, right, bottom, left. So if you think about this, this is the top and the bottom, and I can see, yeah, there's a little bump there. And this is left and right, and I can see there's a pretty substantial bump there. That's about 60. So 20, 60, 20, 60 is what they've got there. And if I go over here, I can see the padding on this. There is no padding on this. So let's go ahead and make that edit. We'll click Container Edit, go to the Attributes, go to padding, and add those in. And then let's click OK. Okay, so I can see that that's already cleaned that up considerably. And even though we do need to make some adjustments to this text, and we'll do that in subsequent exercises, that's looking a little bit closer to what I'm seeing over here. The other thing I'm seeing is this white box. So we want to make sure we've got, we want to put that white box in there as well. And again, that's part of the Edit Container feature on the Background tab. You have these background color options. And I can go through and pick any of these here. White is what is the one that's going to work here. I could add in opacity and drop shadow. So we've got our color selected. Let's click OK. And there we go. So again, we're going to make it, we haven't made any adjustments to that text. We've just copied it in. So we know that it's not right at this point. But there's kind of the first section of putting a container in, adding a component to a container, using some of the options to actually work design here. So these are really valuable exercises and good things to understand as it relates to making your page respond well, making it a quick load for site visitors. So we definitely recommend that you go through and work these exercises.